Hello and welcome to Adapt or Perish, a podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour.
And I'm Ian Averill, and tonight we're talking about Elf.
Hey everybody, guess what we are bringing you for Christmas? Diminishing returns. This one's a bummer. I'm really excited to spend some time talking to you about some great stuff, but then I'm going to be honest, I got kind of mad doing this episode.
Mad at what? Everybody, I'm learning all this for the first time.
I didn't get mad watching Elf the musical, but I got mad watching Elf Buddy's Musical Christmas, the animated special.
Okay.
And I'll get to why. But let's talk about the movie Elf for a little bit, and then we can get to the stuff that made me mad. Is that okay?
That's great. Please, let's do that.
I also feel weird really digging in and trying to solve something Christmas related with someone who actually celebrates Christmas. That's not usually how we do things.
Yeah, no, I do celebrate the old Christmas.
Does the movie Elf represent your celebration of the season well?
I mean, not exactly. I mean, I really enjoy the movie, and I've been watching it as a yearly Christmas, one of the many Christmas watches that I do for several years now. Although it hasn't been a tradition since when it came out, like a lot of people. It is one of those very interesting, like, modern Christmas classics.
Yeah,
that people have latched onto, and it's a real simple little movie, and it is funny and enjoyable, and I like it quite a bit.
Here's the thing about the movie Elf. I'm not 100% sure that we need to do a very detailed back of the box for this one because it's Elf. It's a popular movie, but just in case anybody doesn't know, one day there was this kid who was in an orphanage, little baby, and Santa came to deliver presents, and the baby stowed away in Santa's bag. Santa took him back to the North Pole, and then the baby came out, and Santa said, "I guess you live here now," and they named him Buddy. And then he grew up, and he thought he was an elf.
It's a bit of a logical. It was just like that. I remember this is like I really honed in on it this year watching it. I was like, imagine there's a rule: Santa can't leave the North Pole except for the Christmas trip every year.
Yeah, okay, I could see that.
He could have taken him back to the orphanage like the next year.
That would have been weird.
I mean, I guess it would have been weird. But also, I don't believe. I just made up that rule that I just said. So I really feel like Santa could have just taken him back.
I mean, I really think it speaks to the quality of the movie that is something I have never questioned.
Okay. I didn't question it until this watch.
Here's the thing. If all of the North Pole stuff and the Santa stuff felt, super realistic in this movie, I'd probably be questioning it. But okay. I think the movie is at its best. And I'm not the first person to make this observation.
Right.
But I feel like the movie is at its best when it lives in this really fun Rankin Bass fantasy world of the North Pole.
Of course. Like if this was the North Pole reality presented in, say, the Santa Claus with like commando elves with jetpacks and stuff.
Yes.
Then I'd be like, why didn't they just take him back? But,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, Santa kidnaps a baby, and then the baby grows up in the North Pole. He believes he is an elf, but he is not an elf.
The baby kidnapped itself, but okay.
What? He's a stowaway. And then finally it is revealed to him that he is in fact a human, and Santa comes clean and tells him that his mom put him in an orphanage, and she passed away, and his dad is on the naughty list. And Buddy leaves the North Pole to go find his dad, Walter, who lives in New York City with his wife and son. And his dad's kind of a jerk. But then over the course of the movie, they develop a beautiful relationship because it is that kind of delightful movie. And also Buddy falls in love with Zooey Deschanel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because who wouldn't?
Her eyes are so big.
I just feel like we weren't prepared for this movie. We weren't ready for something so good-natured.
When it came out, you mean?
Pure. Yeah, when it came out.
Yeah.
It was such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I mean, in a pretty close to post 9/11 world, yeah, it was I don't know where that came from.
No, I mean, here's the deal. I was thinking of it in terms of W's first term.
Oh, so our thought process was similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a time where I was a little depressed about the state of things. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of nice to have this movie come out. Anyway, so the movie Elf was directed by Jon Favreau. It was written by David Berenbaum. It's the first nice Jewish boy we'll be mentioning in this episode. Because all of the best Christmas stuff, it's all written by Jews.
Yeah.
And it starred Will Ferrell as Buddy Hobbs, a star-making turn. Because he'd been in movies before.
Sure.
My memory of it was that Elf made Will Ferrell a star.
It certainly did. It was definitely his first like major starring role.
Will Ferrell's perfect. Like, he's perfect. This is I feel confident in saying that his Buddy the Elf is one of the greatest comedic performances of all time.
Wow. Damn.
I like
How much, if that's true, how much did you dislike other parts of it to give it to only kind of like it?
I think the movie is okay. I think it has some stuff in it that's amazing.
You mean like you think the crafted film is just okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Will Ferrell's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
The production design, the practical effects
Yep.
are a delight. Like just a true delight.
A bunch of the other casting, Ed Asner is just this like particularly hits a great Santa for me.
I mean, I think the cast is uniformly great.
Yeah.
I think the characters are a mixed bag.
No, yeah, I can see that. I think a lot of the auxiliary characters are a little wishy-washy.
So like Jimmy Caan is a newcomer when this movie came out. Hadn't really been in many movies before.
Yeah, everyone was like, who's this guy?
He's great. And I think Walter is a fantastic character.
Yeah.
And I think that's good because for me, the core relationship of the movie is Buddy and his dad.
Mm-hmm.
I think Emily, Walter's wife, played by Mary Steenburgen,
Mm-hmm.
she's present. I love Mary Steenburgen. Emily is not much of a character.
I'm with you. I love Mary Steenburgen, of course. But that character is weird for me because she's like, I mean, it's a silly like movie for kids, so this shouldn't matter. But
Yeah.
just the fact that she's like, oh, you have a son you didn't know about. Well, okay, and that's great. Like, They didn't even think to have some kind of little thing where she was like, you didn't know? Are you sure? Like that, where she like maybe didn't believe for a second that he,
Yeah.
because it's James Caan. Like he maybe is not totally trustworthy. He's on the naughty list, for Christ's sake.
I do feel a little silly saying this about this movie that is for families and children, as you say.
Yeah.
I actually think the movie could have done a little bit more to sell me on Emily and Walter's relationship because I don't
Yes.
understand why they're together. It doesn't seem like she gets anything out of this relationship.
And I feel like it feels weird because the script didn't do much for it, because the script just wants to be about Buddy and his dad. Of course,
Yeah.
that's the central relationship of the movie. I guess I'm just wondering, like, why have him already have a family at all?
Yeah.
You know what it is? I think they just wanted a kid in the
Yes.
movie. They needed an actual kid for Buddy to bounce off of. So that's probably why. But it does. I feel like their relationship does seem weird because it doesn't feel like Walter should have a kid.
I mean, Walter doesn't want a kid. And by the way, and we're talking about Daniel Tay as Michael Hobbs. I actually I think he's great. I don't really have any problem with him. His
he's a fine
character, I actually think is really well written, and I like when he and Buddy are together. So like, I'm actually here for it. I like having his kid there, and I like having his wife there. I just wish that Emily was a little bit more. But just one more thing about how this movie is just kind of fine. I also think the movie takes a really hard turn when Buddy puts on a human suit. That's always the moment for me where it goes from inspired to funny.
Yeah.
Like funny, like lots of comedies.
Yeah.
Funny things happen, but it loses so much magic when Buddy is not dressed as an elf anymore.
Right. Well, because just him dressed as an elf walking around with regular people is like such a striking concept.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I see what you mean.
For me, where the movie gets bad, the parts of the movie that are bad, I think the third act falls apart.
It's weird that it kind of devolves into a whole like modern Christmas movie with like weird sci-fi rules and stuff about like making Christmas, making people believe in Christmas, when I feel like for the first two acts, that's not really what the movie's about.
No.
It's about the relationship. And so for it to kind of turn into a Tinkerbell kind of situation, which is fine. I'm not saying that like that's not bad for a Christmas movie. It just is. I think it's a little incongruent with the first part of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a movie that's about Buddy's relationship with his dad. So for the third act, we're going to remove Buddy from it as much as possible. Like, Buddy's just fixing Santa's sleigh for a really, really good part of it. And then Walter is just with his family separately, and also Jovi. Zooey Deschanel's character. It just, none of it ever connects to me. Also, I feel like the movie never really figured out a sustainable tone for the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
It has one tone when it's in the North Pole and it's doing the Rankin Bass thing. And then it has another tone where it mixes Buddy into New York City. And it's that whole first kind of half hour of the movie where it's him walking through New York City. And it's, again, perfect.
Yeah.
No notes. It's perfect. It's masterfully done.
Yeah.
But the tone of the third act doesn't really match any of that stuff. Like, I don't think it ever really figures out how to make the reality of New York, of the New York in the movie, mesh with the fantasy of the North Pole and Santa and Christmas that the movie has. I don't have a solution. It's not my job to come up with a solution. I just know that it never really worked for me. And especially upon this rewatch, like, I just think the third act falls apart.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I'm not done. Jovi is a problem.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and say this. The female character is a little underwritten.
I don't think I'm going to disagree with anything you have to say here.
I don't think anything about Jovi's storyline works. She's underwritten.
Mm-hmm.
The love story distracts from the central relationship between Buddy and his dad. And it feels gross to give this man-child a love interest.
Maybe they just felt like they had to.
I think they did. I think this felt like a studio note.
And Zooey Deschanel, delightful, and it's great that, like, she sings in the movie, and it was like one of the first things to, like, show people that, oh, she can sing really good.
Yeah.
And that turned into a whole thing, and I feel like that's great. It's almost like her in this movie is good culturally at the time, but it's weird in the movie. It doesn't feel good.
Like, if they decided that the movie was about her breaking out of her shell because of this manic pixie dream boy who came down from the North Pole, then it's a Hallmark movie, and that's great.
Yeah.
But then she kind of needs to be the main character. But if Buddy's the main character and it's about his relationship with his dad, Jovi has nothing to do. Poor Jovi. I feel bad for Jovi, but Jovi should not be in this movie. But anyway, this is a movie with a lot of heart. It is delightful.
Yeah.
Of course it became a musical.
Of course.
I would actually recommend, I'm going to link to it in the show notes, but there is a great watch on YouTube that I found from the channel Wait in the Wings. So we did watch a production of Elf the Musical that we found on YouTube. I will not link to it because I would like it to not get taken down. But there's a different video called The Unbelievable History of Elf the Musical from this channel Wait in the Wings.
Okay.
And it is a wonderfully researched documentary about the making of Elf the Musical. Genuinely, like, they interview Casey Nicholaw, who directed the musical, and Bob Martin, who co-wrote it. I'm sure they would have gotten Thomas Meehan if he hadn't passed away before they made this. But anyway, like, it's a very, very good video about the kind of the journey that Elf took to the stage. The music was by Matthew Sklar, and the lyrics were by Chad Begellen, and a book by Bob Martin, who had also written The Drowsy Chaperone, and Thomas Meehan, who I just mentioned, who had co-written The Producers with Mel Brooks, and also a little musical called Annie.
Ever heard of it?
Knew it was right around a musical that involved Christmas. And it premiered on Broadway in 2010 with Sebastian Arcelus as Buddy. You know him, right?
Yeah. Well, I was reading about it, and I looked him up, and I was like, oh, he's in movies and TV as well.
Yeah.
I know that guy.
There have been a number of revivals of it because it was a seasonal show. Because obviously, like, a Christmas show is not going to do big business outside of the Christmas season. They wanted to do it in 2011, but they couldn't find a venue, so they had to wait until 2012 for the first revival. And they had this dream that it would happen every single year, and then it just didn't. But then there was a West End version, and actually, currently, literally as we record, they are probably performing it right now because it just went back to Broadway.
Oh, wow.
We watched a production of it, a London production. That was broadcast on British TV, and it starred Ben Forster as Buddy.
When you say that, all I think is Elf the Musical starring Ben Foster as Buddy. That is a musical I would like to see.
It would be amazing.
He would be going all over the place. He'd be overacting everywhere, which is important for Buddy.
Yes.
And yeah, maybe he'd be throwing in some roundhouse kicks. I don't know.
He'd be great because he's great all the time. All right. Not to be catty. I do think it would be unfair for us to judge the show Elf based on this performance.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of hated this performance. I found it insufferable. It was so rough to get through.
Yeah, I mean, like when we watch musicals, I have a tough time because I'm so okay. It's like when we talk about anime stuff, and we had Alex on the show.
Sure.
When I watch a musical, much like I watch anime, and I'm talking to somebody who knows, who actually is like a musical person, I'm like, is this good? I don't know. Like, I'm just not as versed in the world of musicals as some people. Yeah, it seemed a little rough to me. I don't know. Ben Forster's accent is so weird.
Okay, yeah.
And his energy is up, you know, like I'm not, there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't know. There was just, it didn't do it for me.
Yeah. So the thing for me is that, and this is why I said before, like, I don't want to judge the musical based on this performance because can I tell you my opinion that I have gained on Elf the musical? This is a good show.
Yeah.
I like it.
I like some of the songs.
Yeah. Like, I actually think the songs are good. The songs, I think, strike a really good balance between, like, just kind of Broadway style, which is something that I have talked about on the show before, not liking. I actually think it kind of works here, and also they're very Christmassy.
Yeah,
because of course they are written by Jews. I can't say that about both of them. Actually, I think the songs are good. I think even the worst songs are still good and kind of fun and really listenable. And some of the songs are really good. And I think a lot of the staging is really good. I think the script is pretty good. I actually think it improves on some things from the movie. Like I was talking before about how I think the third act kind of falls apart. They completely redo the third act because if you're doing a stage production, you can't do Santa being chased through Central Park by a bunch of Nazgul on horses, which is what they are.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Essentially.
Again, that's getting back to the tonal weirdness of that movie.
Yeah.
So I actually think the third act is better, but what they replace it with, even though it's better, I still think it's not great because instead they make the third act Buddy pitching, because one of the things we didn't talk about is how Walter works in children's publishing.
Yeah.
And he needs to get a new book because his boss is breathing down his neck. The little epilogue in the movie is that the book that they do is the story of Buddy. But it's just it's just an epilogue. And what they decided to do with the show is they decided to make that the third act. That's the big thing. Them realizing that they should pitch Buddy's story as a story. I actually think it's kind of nice from a character perspective.
Because it's a good idea, because it's a fun story. You're like when they pitch it, I mean, even in the movie, in the epilogue, when you're just like, yeah, the like elf who's actually a human who got raised by elves, who's like that's like what's good about this movie, like, is that it's like a good little kid story, you know?
Yeah, and I do feel like it's a gamble to make a central point of your story looking at the audience and saying, isn't this a good story? Like, that's a gamble. I think it works in Elf because it is a good story. But when they do that story, it's a really nice way for Walter to show that he has accepted Buddy because he's excited about telling Buddy's story. And I think that's really good writing. Here's the problem, though. Jovi is still a problem.
Yeah, they pretty much didn't make Jovi any better at all.
It's not. Here's a part of it that was worse in the production that we watched. I would accept that it wouldn't necessarily be worse in every production of it, but we haven't seen every production of it. We've only seen this one. We already talked about how it's kind of problematic that there's a love story for this stunted man-child.
Yeah.
But at least Will Ferrell, I think, made it work as well as it could have because he is projecting a really weird maturity inside of this immaturity, if that makes sense. That might make no sense.
Oh, no, I think it makes sense. I see what you're talking about with Ferrell. I think he does that.
I think Ben Forster, it doesn't at all.
He almost feels like he's doing like Pinocchio or something. He feels like he's doing like a clockwork child.
Yes. That doesn't make the Jovi thing better. It makes it worse, in fact. Especially like that thing. There's that line at the end where he starts talking about how like he and Jovi had a special hug that he'd never heard about before. And now they have a kid.
Oh, and the audience lapped it up. They loved it.
The parents did.
Yeah, the kids had no idea what he was talking about.
But I think the other thing, and this goes to Ben Forster playing the character, and I think this is a gamble too. By making it a musical, you are opening yourself up for an endless supply of actors reinterpreting a perfect portrayal of a character.
Okay. Yeah.
And you're going to have years of actors doing the same thing, which is, well, I love the movie, but I didn't want to just do Will Ferrell. I wanted to find my own version of it. Like, I guarantee every single person that has ever played Buddy has had to say that at some point.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes it's true, and maybe sometimes they will find their own version of it. But a lot of times I just think they're going to be reminding you that Will Ferrell's version of the character was great and their version is not great. Mm-hmm. Here was a perfect example, I think, of it not working because the show depends on Buddy. And this version of Buddy was, I thought, insufferable.
Yeah, that's kind of where I came down as well. Plus, it's like, it's a long show.
What they really needed to do is really embrace the like Rankin Bass roots of it. Cut it down, make it like less than an hour, keep some of the songs because Rankin and Bass has songs, but do it like in stop motion.
Yeah, they did that.
They did that.
That's the third thing we're going to talk about.
Elf, Buddy's Musical Christmas, which came out in 2014. It was directed by Mark Caballero and Seamus Walsh. The script is credited to Meehan and Bob Martin because it is very much the musical.
Yeah.
And also credited to Aaron Horvath and Michael Jelinek. Do you recognize those names?
Yep.
Is there something else we did recently that they were heavily involved in?
They were the pair that directed the Mario movie, right?
Yeah, the aggressively mediocre, middle-of-the-road Mario movie.
Well, I'm not going to say middle. We can't. We're not going to litigate this whole thing again. But I mean,
nope.
It's bonkers, and something that's bonkers can't be middle of the road, Jeremy.
It is not bonkers. What are you talking about? It's so predictable. Hang on. Wait a second. I'm worried.
Yeah. Okay.
Because Horvath and Jelinek do sound a lot like Morton and Jankel.
Okay. Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. I was thinking that they were the couple that directed the 90s live action bonkers Mario. Okay, they did the new one. Okay, which, yes, is very middle of the road.
Describing the Bob Hoskins one as aggressively middle of the road is an insane thing to say. No, the animated Super Mario Brothers movie that came out very recently.
Safe is what I'd call that movie.
Super safe. And this is exactly the same thing. I said before that it made me mad.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that. Like, I'm not saying that this thing is like out of the park or like but I'm curious about it making you mad. I just thought it was like, well, first of all, I had just watched the musical.
Yes.
Which was long and kind of a slog and annoying to me. Then I was presented like, oh, you get to hear the best songs from that again in a animated thing that's like only 40 minutes long. It was like a breath of fresh air. But what about it made you mad?
Because the animated special that it could have been, that I can imagine, was something great. And what it ended up being was something aggressively meh.
Okay.
I don't think it hit anything that it was aiming for. Like, it was aiming for the Rankin Bass feel. And when I say, I've said Rankin Bass a number of times in this, but just to make sure that people know what I'm talking about like The Year Without a Santa Claus and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman, like the old stop motion Christmas specials. Snow Miser, Heat Miser.
Yeah, of course.
They had terrible animation, but they had feel.
Right.
They were amazing at having a very consistent feel, and the music was always great. This is aiming to evoke that, but it feels like a pale imitation of those.
Animation wise, yeah, I agree with you. I agree that that's what it's aiming for, and it definitely falls a little short. Yeah.
Well, no, and script wise too, because I just felt like it had no personality.
Yeah.
Like every single joke that happens in it, every single scene just feels really predictable. Like it felt like the kind of thing that now we would say that like, an LLM wrote it or something, or AI wrote it or something like that. It doesn't feel like it was written by people. It feels like it was written by a program that had watched Christmas specials.
Okay.
Like
I
it
can
didn't
see that.
Like that. The thing about Elf that I love is that it felt like it was made by people with a point of view, and this didn't feel that way.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I think this is just a case of chance perception.
Yeah.
In my case, I think there's three things. I've already said one of them. I just watched the musical that I wasn't so hot on, and this was like a incredibly shorter and simpler version of that. Then on top of that, I do like many of the songs in the musical. Mm-hmm. The thing with songs, though, is that like I always have trouble watching a musical for the first time because it is very difficult for me for a song in a musical to pop the first time I hear it.
Yeah.
When I'm watching a musical, like the first time, it's always kind of a slog for me because I can't get into the music instantly.
Yeah.
So this also had the second thing going for it, that it's like took the best songs from that and included it in this. And this time when I'm hearing them, it's the second time I'm sort of hearing them. So I'm like, yeah, this song is good.
Yeah.
It's like, because of that, it's more like I'm retroactively realizing that the musical is good.
Yeah.
Know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. And then on top of that, I kind of like a lot of the voice cast. But
I did too.
Yeah.
So Jim Parsons plays Buddy.
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, he's fine.
Mark Hamill plays Walter, which is weird, and he can sing, apparently. Like, he can sing as well as he needs to be Walter.
Yeah. I mean, it's a voice. If it's a voice part, Mark Hamill's always good.
Ed Asner comes back as Santa.
Yeah, I liked that.
And he's great. And also Gilbert Gottfried is Mr. Oh, this is another thing that we didn't really talk about because we didn't know whether we had time to do it. But one of the really fascinating things to watch over the course of like movie to musical to this is what happened with Miles Finch.
Yeah.
In the movie Elf, Miles Finch is played by Peter Dinklage. Mm-hmm. He is a famous children's book author who they bring in as a ringer to write their new children's book. Buddy comes in and calls him an elf, and Peter Dinklage gets mad.
It's a classic Peter Dinklage good performance. It's a fun scene.
Peter Dinklage is great in everything he's in.
Yeah.
They don't keep Miles in the musical, but they do keep Mr. Greenway, who is Walter's boss. So in the movie, there's his boss and there's Miles Finch. And then clearly when Horvath and Jelinek were writing this animated special, they clearly thought to themselves, you know what the musical's missing? We really miss punching down and making fun of little people.
Let's combine Greenway and Finch into one character.
So they take Greenway and they make him short.
Yeah.
And also they give him Gilbert Gottfried's voice, which is always inspired, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, sure. It's real good. It's like, doing this to this character was bad news, but it's Gilbert Gottfried voicing him, so you know what? It's fine.
Yeah, like I could have done without it, honestly. Like I could have done without it, even though I love Gilbert Gottfried. Just watching the trajectory of that character across the three is just fascinating to watch.
But then, I mean, a big one for me is like, I consider it pretty inspired voice casting to have Jovi be like, they're just like, we need another like adorkable girl who sings songs. And so they got Kate Micucci, and it's kind of perfect. Not to say that the character's really any better, but voice casting wise, that was kind of a super fun decision to me.
This is the best version
of Jovi?
Of Jovi. This is the best one.
Okay.
That's another thing that makes me mad. It's like, why does this one, this aggressively meh thing, this total middle of the road product, it's got the best, it's the closest to making Jovi work. Mm-hmm. And Kate Micucci, I think, was, like, to your point, Kate Micucci's a really big part of why Jovi works so well.
You know what? I bet one of the other reasons is that it's so short.
Yes.
Like, underwritten characters don't feel as bad the shorter the thing is made.
That's true.
Because then they're just there. Mm-hmm. There's the part of them that you like, and then it's over. I just think it's good because it's only 40 minutes long.
Merry Christmas. Let's do some quadrants. Okay, 2010 musical. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Yeah.
Yeah, deeply.
Yeah. Quite a bit.
Do you think it's successful? I'm not talking about the production we watched. Do you think the musical
a
show
is
how
it could potentially be staged in my imagination?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the music and the script, like those are things we can definitely judge.
So yes.
Buddy's Musical Christmas. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Yeah, I mean, like the source material being the musical.
Yeah. And the movie Elf.
Yeah. I mean, I think they cared about both.
I mean, it's weird to say because, like, who doesn't love Elf?
Yeah, exactly.
Just people with a heart of stone. And was it successful?
Medium.
No.
Medium successful for me.
My vote is no.
Well, good thing there are no votes.
Humbug. Well, this has been Adapter Parish. You can always find us online at adapterparishcast.com. There you'll find our social links, contact information, show notes for this and every episode, and more. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will be back in 2 weeks with The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side.
Have a good one, everybody.